You can leave that on the screen. Help desk section 3, put your thinking cap on. We gotta fix some cars. Now we gotta tell people what they need to do to fix cars. Some of you guys are gonna know right away what's wrong with these vehicles, and some of you guys may not. Here's a 93 Mercury Sable. The transmission was bad, and after they towed it to the shop, couldn't get it out of park. After the guys disconnected and replaced the transmission, which ran great once, it froze in the park again. They all got stumped. Now these guys replaced the transmission in this car. They said it froze in park. Right? Couldn't get it out of park. I've actually seen people try to force them out of park and break the shift collar on these things. Can you give us an idea of where to look for the trouble? Could it be a gear shift in the steering column or worse? And if that isn't bad enough, how tough is it to fix? Engine's half rebuilt already. It's in great shape. Okay.
That's what that Lincoln was doing.
What might this problem be? We've experienced that on the Lincoln.
A brake pedal switch, could be bad.
Okay, that's part of it. And what'd you notice about the Lincoln?
As soon as you put it in, or as soon as you cut the car off and put it, the key forward once, it would go into neutral, or it would shift out.
Yeah, you could turn it to the first click before the lights on the dash came on, and you drop it in neutral, then you can start it and drive it. And what that usually is on one of these, the wires at the stoplight switch. Every time you mash the brake, it bends them a little bit, and then they wind up breaking. You get a pigtail from the parts house for almost no money. And this was on his, he says, you were right on target. $10 part, reconnect the wires, it runs and drives like brand new, ships without any problems. Thank you so much. I had seen that before. If you've seen it before, you get more of an idea. But if the brake lights aren't working, that's a clue, isn't it? You mash the brakes and none of the brake lights are working. All right, here's another one. 88 Crown Victoria. He says, I drive an LTD. Well, by this time they weren't called LTDs, but this guy's older, and so he thought of an LTD. Went to the grocery store, turned the car off, took the keys out, went inside, got his groceries, came back out and put the groceries up. Could hear the fuel pump running even though the keys were in his pocket. Got in, started the car and headed home. Halfway there, the car shut off, wouldn't start back. Wait a minute, why did the car shut off partway home?
The regulator's bad.
Pulled over, turned the key and on and off, listening for the fuel pump. The fuel pump never would come back on. And he's pretty well on target there. That's not too terribly bad. I went out there one time to see why this motorhome wouldn't start, and one ant had crawled up in that relay and got in between the relay terminals, and when they tried to close, it crushed that ant, and there was no fuel pump operation. So we had a little tiny little ant that stopped a 10,000 pound motorhome from going anywhere. One little tiny, and it wasn't a bunch of ants, it was one ant.
They said I can carry 10 times their weight.
Huh? What? What was
They
that?
say ants can carry 10 times their weight.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. They can, they're strong, but they get crushed by them points. All right, this one here is really easy, and it sounds like the fuel pump relay stuck and then failed. It's the relay with the green connector on the left fender apron. He said you hit the nail on the head, replace the relay, started up, doing fine. If those relays that are mounted, like the one that's the green one would be the fuel pump relay, and the brown one's the EEC power relay, if anybody mounts those hanging by the wires, instead of mounting them up this way, water is going to get on those wires, run down in those relays and mess them up. I don't know how many times I've seen that. I'd open the hood on one that came in with a no start, and if the relay was hanging, I'd unplug the relay, hit it on my hand, some water would come out of it, and put a relay on it, and it was typically big. He threw in nothing flat. All right, so that's the reply and his follow-up. All right, in the past few months, every time I back up and start forward, there is any slipping of the tires, such as the snow or gravel, a message appears to check traction control. Then the radio goes off, the windows won't work. This looks like some of Jonathan's there, won't work. And finally, the car dies. I can have it jumped off and it will be fine until the next time this scenario happens. Can I turn traction control off, or will this cause any damage? I need a solution, guys. The clock is ticking.
Buy a new car.
Well, alrighty then. That should be nice and cheap. What else? Are you thinking like a consumer?
Don't drive on the snowy days.
Anybody? Yeah, don't drive on a snowy day or in
Don't
your
take it
gravel.
to
So,
Firestone
stay off
either.
the gravel or a snowy day. Nobody has a clue. Huh?
Charge too much.
Anybody got a clue?
Unless one of Will Speed's sensors is bad, and it's like throwing an improper ratio to the computer, and that's.
What's that got to do with the
putting
radio?
it- That was putting it in default mode, shutting the car off. I don't know.
Okay, well, that's a nice try. What about you? What about you, Justin? What do you think? That was a really good answer there. All right, I knew what to tell him, or called myself know what to tell him. Traction control's not causing that. You have a bad ignition coil. Somebody has to find out which one. You have several. He said, I've replaced 2 ignition coils and my mechanic told me I need to replace the other soon. He wasn't unable to detect the problem with this. Can't wait to tell him. This has been a problem all along. Anytime you saw one of those cars, and a lot of different cars, I've seen a Ford Expedition Jimmy was working on over there. When you go to give it gas, they go, whoa, 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 just go all over the place, tack go crazy, everything go crazy. And he wound up unplugging the coil packs one at a time and running it until when he unplugged one of them, it cleaned up its act, except for it was a skip, you know. And he replaced that coil and took care of it. When in doubt, unplug the coils one at a time, see if the problem goes away. That's the best way you can do that. And whenever you unplug the one that stops it from happening, that'll be it. These coils put out radio frequency interference and cause all kinds of problems. All right, 98 Dodge Grand Caravan. I bought this van just about a month ago, and it has just over 100,000 miles on it. Running fine for about 2 weeks, and the transmission leaked the red oil. That would be transmission fluid. So the garage where I brought the car from repaired the transmission. Now 2 weeks down the road, I find that sometimes my gears would slip. All right, so if I put the gear in reverse, sometimes it does not catch and the engine just revs. When I'm driving, sometimes the gear will go to neutral and the car doesn't go forward. I had to stop and put the gear in place. Sometimes this takes a while before it catches in reverse. And he had to put it, drive it back to reverse before it would work. Take it back to the garage, but I hope you don't mind explaining what the possible problems with gears act like that. He wants to get an explanation from an independent expert. But that's me, by the way, independent expert. Okay, rather than listening to the crap the garage sometimes try to pull over them. Okay.
Sounds like it's low on transmission fluid.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me too. What should he do? All right, sound like transmission low on fluid, especially if it drops in neutral when you're going around a curve. That's one of the crazy things about that. You can be driving a car, go around a curve, if it kicks into neutral and then catches after you go around a curve. Let's say that you check a transmission fluid and it shows full. What do you do then?
Service transmission, replace the ring.
You might have a torque converter.
No, that's not what you do. You pour in another quart of fluid and see if it still does it. So sometimes they got the wrong dipstick. That clear enough? All right. Anytime one neutralizes when you're going around a curve, it's the cheapest and easiest thing to do is pour in another quart of fluid, see if it still does it. That ain't complicated. All right. Took the car back to the garage. They kept it for half a day. Told me it cost $500 to fix it. I told them I'll think about it. Took it to another place and asked them to check the transmission fluid. They said it's low. Filled it up, and I don't have the problem anymore. The guys at the garage were talking about taking the whole transmission down, but actually pinpoint the problem from the description. Basically, and what Jonathan was doing, it's not hard if one does that. If you put it in gear and it doesn't sit there for a second when it's cold, boom, and then it grabs. So the transmission fluid swells up, and the level gets higher as it gets warm. So it's going to do worse cold than it is warm, but you know, he had all the symptoms of low transmission fluid. All right. It says, I have a 2000 Chrysler Cirrus 2.4. The alternator belt broke, and I just replaced it. And now the engine won't turn over. I figured the battery was drained, so I jumped it, but it still won't turn over. Then I thought I might not have it on too tight, so I loosened the belt a little, and that didn't help either. Any ideas? Thanks, Tim.
Something's locked up on the belt.
Something's locked up on the belt. That's all it can be, really. I'm thinking, you know. And so what was I telling you this morning? What do you do?
I pulled the belt back off, see if it turned.
Yeah, take it off, see if it'll start with the belt off. Well, I told you I had this girl that was enrolled in here one time years ago, and she said her car wouldn't, like her daddy said, I got a starter for the car, and we can't do it, and she didn't live very far from here. I said, well, let me send some of the guys over, we'll drag your car over here, and we'll fix it here. So she drug it over here, and when we were turning it, I said, it sounded like the motor's locked up, because the starter would go, don't, you know, and you could tell it was popping in there good and strong. And so, put a breaker bar on there. When the guy went to pull it, I saw the belt slipping on the AC clutch pulley. So we took the belt off and it fired up. and she needed an AC clutch point. All right, remove the belt and see if it'll start that way. Sounds like something's locked up. If it does start, check the pulleys driven by the belt and see which one won't turn with your hand. He said the car started without the belt, so when he checked the pulley, it was the AC one that was locked up. Told me there's an easy fix. I basically said you can get a pulley kit if your air conditioner is crap anyway and your air conditioner is not working. They sell a kit that replaces the compressor with just a pulley. You know, if you don't want to, if you don't fix the AC. Believe it or not, you can buy the bearing that goes in the AC clutch for like $17 on Amazon. They're not hard to get. All right, 2005 Mazda 6. My car has starts to hum at a certain speed. It's an automatic, but when it's in fourth gear, it starts to hum. Do you know what this could be?
Is it a manual?
Huh?
Manual or automatic?
It's an automatic, is what it says right there. Starts to hum in fourth gear.
Gears might not mean nothing. Could be a bad universal one. You know,
Starts
something.
to hum like,
Is it front wheel drive or rear wheel drive?
Well, if it's a Mazda 6, it's not going to be rear wheel drive.
Tires might be bad.
That's possible. Yeah, that's not such a bad.
They might be relating fourth gear to a speed, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's possible. Does it change with the throttle angle or vehicle speed remaining in fourth? Yes, if I go past, see he put past, that's another Johnson price there. If I go past 40, it will start to hum pretty loudly. I think he was typing this on his phone. If you swerve gently back and forth, does the humming get quieter or stop? If so, it's a hub bearing. So, he found it was a hub bearing. Went to a mechanic that tried to take advantage of me, and I was able to break down the symptoms and possible issue. He all of a sudden took me seriously. When he knew this guy was, had some little bit of knowledge of how to pinpoint it, he took him seriously. But isn't it terrible if you go to somebody and if they think you're dumb, they're going to try to take advantage of you? You know what I mean? You ever heard of any stories like that? Like that blonde lady that worked here at the college went to a dealership over there, and they wanted to charge her $350 labor to change an inside door handle on her little Nissan.
Really?
And so he was thinking, I'm blind and I was born at night, but not last night. So no, I don't think so. All right. 2003 Dodge Dakota. The headlights or dash lights will not turn on. The electric locks have stopped working. The remote will not unlock the door. The interior lights won't come on either. I have checked the fuses and all seem to be okay. Thanks. TF.
Body control module.
What you gonna do to it? You gonna go get a body control module, reflash it and put it on there, or? I mean, you gotta do better than just
I mean,
saying.
I checked, and make sure it had all the powers and grounds.
Yeah, all cars and rounds. Let's do, everybody else like that fix? Huh?
I didn't hear the problem.
What is it?
I didn't hear the problem.
Think you got problems? Obviously, or he wouldn't have sent me an email.
I said I didn't hear the problem.
Oh, a whole bunch of stuff doesn't work. You know, the lights, the locks, and a whole bunch of stuff went dark all at one time. That's body computer stuff. Disconnect the battery, take the two cables you disconnected from the battery, touch the two cables together for about 20 seconds, reconnect the two cables to the battery, see if that changes anything. He said, that worked. The headlights and everything else works fine now. It's a huge relief. I thought I was going to have to pay buku bucks to find out what was wrong. I'd recommend you any day. See, basically what you do when you touch them together, you're bleeding all of the juice out of the capacitors by touching the battery terminals together. That's not to say you touch the battery terminals together. You touch the ones together that are coming from the car with them off the battery. And when you touch them together, that bleeds it down really fast. And so you can do that, and most of the time, that will clear up crazy problems. There was a guy on a Dodge Dakota or something that sent me a similar problem. Had a bunch of stuff that I never would have even figured this would fix, but whenever he did that, he emailed me back and said it doesn't care. 99 Jeep Cherokee 4-liter, the check engine light has been coming on for the last 2 weeks. It tries to die occasionally when idling and misfires while driving, bucks and kicks and loses power. Diagnostics show 2 codes, P0340, no cam signal at PCM, P0351, ignition coil number 1 primary circuit. Anybody got any ideas already? I've replaced both the crankshaft sensor and the ignition coil, but I've had no success. Also checked the ASD relay and it seems to be fine. Anybody know? He needs an answer, and needs a good one. Need to do this first time, every time. Nobody has a clue.
Hold on, go back to that.
Why did you replace the crank if it was the cam?
Well, you'd have to ask him that. He replaced both, well, he also was noticing the number one primary circuit code, I guess, I don't know. I don't know why he went there. Now, the cam sensor on this one is really easy to replace.
Yeah, but he didn't change the crank sensor that was throwing code.
Yeah, he may have changed, well, no, he didn't he changed the crankshaft sensor, but why he chose to change the crankshaft sensor, I cannot answer that question, but that's what he said he did. And this is an actual guy, I didn't make this up, okay? All right, so, notice what he's got. He's got bucket and jerking going down the road, he's got cam sensor codes, he's also got primary ignition coil. Well, primary ignition coil is what triggers the coil of fire, right? So he's got a fault for that. It's an insidious code. And I said the cam sensor needs to be adjusted. When I sent a link to the article I had called Scan Tools, O-Scopes, and Toothpicks. It was an article that I wrote about that, where we had one out here doing that same dang thing. I went over that. He said, I saw in my Haynes book where on 99 or earlier models, the cam sensors found within the distributor is known as a stator. Would replace it as help. And I said, no. What you need to do is make sure it's adjusted right, replacing it won't do anything. So he said, I removed the old cam sensor, looks to be in good condition. Well, you can't tell by looking at it. Align the pulse ring alignment hole with the alignment hole in the base of the distributor housing. But in order to do this, I had to rotate the crankshaft outside of TDC. Seems like the pulse ring is fixed to the shaft. How do I align the pulse ring with its appropriate mating alignment hole while keeping the crankshaft at TDC? Now that's kind of tricky. If you've been here before, you kind of know what to tell him. Of course, I'd worked at the dealer, and so we had done things. The distributor housing needs to be rotated. You may have to modify the hole down to make it happen, because they got that little forked thing that sticks off it where you can't turn the distributor. Now what we would have to do at the dealership was hacksaw that off of there, because it's got a hole down. And so we hacksaw that little fork, and I'll show you a picture of it in a minute. And then we were able to turn it so we could set it with it at TDC compression, which is kind of like what you guys were doing up here the other day with this cam sensor, right? Line the pulse ring with the whole distributor housing, blah, blah, blah. So this is what it looks like. That's what the distributor looks like. There's your little dowel pin that's going to basically, there's a hole in the housing and there's a hole in here in the pulse ring. And you see that little thing right there? Now this right here goes over the top of that. And this is the bolt goes through there, and that keeps you from being able to turn the distributor. Why? Because you cannot turn the distributor and set the timing on this. Why can't you set the timing by turning the distributor on this, but you can on the engines like the 350? Why does turning the distributor not change it, not adjust the timing? We get some better ones?
You're interrupting class.
Hey, she's legit. Okay, you got it, girl. All right. Hey, I didn't sign this for you. Turn that light on.
Get out of here.
Amber was a waitress in a small cafe. All right, we're gonna go.
Alright.
Did you need to, did there maybe a credit on the other ones that we had?
Yeah, that's what's underneath them.
Take that one around. All right. I'm burning daylight here. Okay, we're good on that. I think that's all you need. All right.
Hey, don't hit nobody.
She turned the light off. Okay, anyway, what happens is when you turn the distributor a little bit, where is the signal coming from that it uses to fire the coil?
From that.
From the crank sensor.
Yeah.
It ain't coming from here. It ain't coming from here, it comes from the crank sensor you got replaced. Crank sensor's mounted on the bell housing, you can't move that. The only way you'd be able to adjust the ignition timing was move the, unless you're doing the computer's doing it electronically, is by moving the crank sensor, and you can't move the crank sensor on that one. You'd have to move it, up or down around, not closer or farther away, but up or down. So anyway, they cut that off, you put it on TDC, you turn the distributor until that little pin goes in there, or whatever you're using on that particular one. When you get that pulse ring lined up with on TDC compression number 1, you stick that through there, you're good to go. And you basically also have it where your firing window, where this rotor is spinning around, that firing window needs to center on that post. If you got it out of sync, then the fire may be jumping over here, it may hit that one instead of that one when it's supposed to hit that one. I mean, I've seen that ever since 1980 model, Lincolns and Fords and all. We used to have to do the rotor alignment on those for that same reason. We had a soaking wet carpet on the front passenger side of the van. This is a 2005 Town and Country. We had not run through any rain the first time it happened. I thought the air conditioner condensation must be dripping inside the van. My wife talked to another woman that has a 2003 Chrysler van, and she said hers does the same doggone thing. Do you know, or have you heard of this happening to others? Is it common with these vans, and what can be done about it? I would really appreciate an answer if you have one. Anybody have a clue?
I'd say the heater cord leaking a little bit, or the drip and drain on the box is stopped up. You know,
You're close, but
Cause-
you're
cause
close,
them-
but neither one of those is a cigar. You know. I mean, you're close though, you're close.
the little rubber hose come off where it goes through the firewall. Possibly somebody bumped over their foot.
They spilled water in the car.
You know what I'm talking about? Because them things have got a round elbow rubber hose that goes into the bottom of the air conditioning box.
This one here's just got a stiff plastic thing that comes out.
Well, some of
It's
them.
cracked.
No, but I'll show you what it is doing. Okay, wow, look at there, how in the world happened to that? Did I go past that?
Yep.
That, see that? That's a stiff little plastic thing. They made it, they cut it at an angle, hoping it would go ahead and drip on off of here. But if it's tilted up a little bit, and usually it is, the water runs down it like you pour, you know how sometimes when you pour coffee out of the coffee pot, no matter what you do, it runs down the coffee pot? And it runs back in here and it goes inside the car. And enough of it keeps running back inside the car following that same trail until it just soaks the carpet on the right side. That's fairly common. I've seen it on Chryslers and Dodges and Dodge Dakotas and Chrysler Sebrings and all kinds of stuff. When you need to take the evaporator drain, there's a little cover over this where you can't see it. That compounds things even further. You pull that off and you smear silicone all over this, a real heavy duty bunch of silicone so that that water can't get in there and it dries it all up. Oh, see, this hole is bigger than that, and that's just foam, so there's nothing to stop it. As a matter of fact, you can look that up on Identifix, and that's what it'll tell you to do. There's several, they own older Ford pickups with V8 motors, 2 or 351 Windsor EFI. This is right down your alley, Justin. The other is 460. We all seem to be having the same problem. Fuel detonation knock. Running high test fuel, it causes the least problem to the motor, not to our wallets. I have had the plugs changed, went higher temp on the thermostat, which made it worse. Time and check, new wires, rotor cap coil, still got the knock at highway speed, gets worse under load. Tried fuel additives with small improvement, but it's still there. We all use our trucks to pull fairly large horse trailers, and would like to figure out how to fix this problem. So you got any suggestions, remedies, advice, short of buying a new truck, which is what you were about to say? We will hold up to hear them, thank you. What do you think?
I'd turn the tone back just a little bit.
But that's gonna make it have lousy power and get crappy fuel economy.
Yeah, but they might not have it set right. They might have to pull that little pin that's out.
Time.
All of these guys setting it the same way that they're all pinging? Yeah, I mean, that's what you do whenever you're, trying to do this. As a matter of fact, on that Sable out there, there's a little plug you can pull on the wire harness that retards the time in 3 degrees. If you're trying to find a pain problem. You're not supposed to leave it out, but they put it there so you can pull it to check it. What do you think? All right, this is what I told you. Any engine, new or old, well, actually I told y'all this, can give the problem. It just so happens these guys are all driving older Ford, but it doesn't matter what brand, any of them can do it. And any of them are subject to do it. Okay, what's happening is, they got carbon that's caked up on the pistons and the heads. Now what does that do? Raises the compression. When it raises the compression, you wind up with detonation, spark knock, that kind of thing, when you're using 87 octane gas. Okay, carbon in the combustion chamber raises compression called spark knock, generally caused by years of driving and using high octane fuel, which burns slower and forms carbon in the chamber. With the engine in a large open area where smoke won't bother anybody and the air cleaner off, hold the throttle open and trickle some Type F transmission fluid so it'll be drawn into the intake. Run a quart through it, doing this to soften the carbon in the chamber. On the head and on the top of the pistons, you'll see lots of smoke. And boy, you better do like Elvis and leave the building when you do this, because it's going to smoke everything up in a big way. The police may think it's your car caught fire and all that kind of stuff. But what that's doing is softening up the carbon and it's starting to get rid of some of it. After you run a quart of Top F through it, follow up with a pint of cool water, trickling it the same way. Don't put either the fluid or the water in too fast. It'll run crappy during these maneuvers, and you may see some specks of water on your dipstick, but the PCV system will steam it out. So after you run the fluid and the water through it, let it work on the carbon. The truck is, drive it fairly aggressively until all the smoke's gone. The best part is this doesn't cost anything and it doesn't really take a whole lot of skill. Make sure the EGR valve on each vehicle is connected and working properly. That and the above should take care of it. And never use high test fuel on it. It'll cause more problems than it solves on an engine that's designed for 87. And so this guy says, I got the chance last week to try your advice. The engine was idling smoother and starts much easier now because it was kicking back on him because of all that high compression previously. He says, if I still have some detonation knock, should I do the process again? A friend recommended I do the same thing using seafoam instead of transmission fluid. But they're ultimately the same. I just use transmission fluid. Seafoam's $12 a little can. And so, but anyway, what he was doing is doing the, you know, there's a motor vac machine that does this, but you're basically running a lot of stuff through there. Have you guys ever seen what does it look like? If you've worked on a lot of engines and you've seen some that blew the head gasket so that a lot of water was getting into the combustion chamber, what does that piston look like?
Well, water's getting in there.
If a lot of water is getting in there,
It'll be shining.
brand spanking new, man. It looks like a new piston. And so that's what that's what this is all about.
How come 350 Chevrolets is bad about blowing the head gaskets in between like 2 and 4 and 1 and 3?
I don't know, but those things, the way that they're set up, you wouldn't think they would because they got 5 bolts around each cylinder.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
though? You seen it though?
Yeah, and I've seen them crack heads too, you know, right there by the valve seat.
I did a head job on one of my buddy's trucks, and he ain't had no more problems out of it. And it was labor knocking like you're talking about, and I redid the heads and all in the house, put new valve seats in them, took and re-grinded all the valves, everything, put it in there, and it had so much compression when I put it back in there. It had a low knock in the bottom end. He kept driving it, knock went away, everything, truck runs good.
He hammered those bearings into shape, didn't he? That's good stuff. All right. All right. I thought that was a pretty good story there.